I grew up in South Central, which is this neighborhood where my studio's at now. I was actually illegal up until I was out of elementary school. Growing up around this neighborhood, you get to a certain age where you kind of have to make a decision in the way of how you're going to prove yourself to your peers. And mine was either join a gang that all my friends were in or doing graffiti. Becoming a teenager, I discovered all these different genres and subcultures that revolved around different styles of music. I gravitated towards music as a way of creating an identity. These ideas of being underground, where like, you know, punk was this kind of aggressive underground movement, even like early on rave culture. There's a warehouse not too far from here where I went to a rave. There's a building back here that I actually went to a rave too. So when I found this place, it was like, again, this kind of coming home or whatever home is. You know. I did 4 years at Otis, and I took a year off. Historically, MacArthur Park was this area where all the wealthy people used to go. Like over time, over like the century, it became this neighborhood of immigrants where there was a lot of Mexican and Central American immigrants. Daniel Martinez actually was a big influence, and he was teaching at UC Irvine, and that was the only grad program that I really wanted to go to and the only program that I applied to. This older work that I did that had to do with ideas of rave culture and its ideas of this kind of secret organization that moves around. There's always references to punk lyrics or reggae lyrics. If you look at the history of reggae music, how subversive it was from the beginning. What goes on underground. A lot of the work that I'm doing right now has to do with South Central and LA and this particular neighborhood and how it's changed over the past 25 years. Now it's no longer the LAPD. Now it's the ICE, which is the Immigration and Custom Enforcement, which is now under the government, Homeland Security. There's always musical reference. There's always some kind of art historical reference. There's always some subcultural reference. There's always some personal reference. Now, it's how does the work read somewhere else? How will the work read in Latin America and Europe? Will they get the same reference? This machine kills fascists. It's a reference to Guthrie. To me, it's really obvious that kind of folk music from like the 1920s, of course, influenced like punk rock, and of course influenced electronic music. I'm referencing the Hacienda nightclub, which was this very important nightclub that existed in Manchester. It's looking at house music, DJ culture, this culture of house parties that exists here in LA. And it's all modeled after the house that I actually grew up in, my parents' house. What might not seem like ideas that would parallel each other or kind of exist together. I think Richard Serra is a really interesting artist because he kind of straddles this kind of old model of the modernist tradition, but at the same time he straddles this highly conceptual world that I think is really interesting. I recreated 4 of his pieces. Two pieces were sculptural pieces, which were House of Cards and Inverted House of Cards. But I recreated them with using Led Zeppelin records. There's a film that he did where it's just a tight shot of his hand trying to catch lead. In my piece, I'm trying to catch Led Zeppelin records. Very famous writing in his sketchbook where it's these verbs. My piece was titled Reverb. So it's again this idea of re-looking, recontextualizing. This piece titled We Are Family. And it was this piece that referenced Andre's floor pieces, but it was made out of blue and red bandanas. So again, it's this personal reference to my history and growing up in this kind of ground zero of Bloods and Crips. And We Are Family is the title of a like late 70s, early 80s song by Sister Sledge. And it's titled that because the high school that I went to, the principal changed the school song or school motto to that. And every student had to wear a button that had red and blue on it. There was another piece that went with that series where I recreated the Carl Andre out of cardboard. So instead of these 12 by 12 pieces of steel or lead, they were created out of 12 by 12 inch pieces of cardboard. There's one piece that references Stella's black paintings. My piece is called White Minority, and it's a direct reference to Black Flag, a song called White Minority. And then in that series was The Breaks, where it was documentation of me breakdancing on a Carl Andre. I was doing a lot of kind of more performative work, a lot of time-based work. I was doing a lot of work that had to do with like bass and sound. So I kind of came from this background of doing really kind of interventionist performative work, where now like a lot of the work is more object-based. I was collaborating with another artist, and we were doing projects out in the street. We were making paintings, hanging them out on chain link fences. We were, a lot of site-specific work. And my friend and I went into the museum. We kind of waited for the guards to kind of like walk around, because I knew they wouldn't really say anything, but at the same time I kind of didn't want to be in that situation where like we would get kicked out and I wouldn't be able to finish the piece, because I wanted to get exactly at least 25 shots, because that was the same layout as the Andre piece that I was on. At the same time, if you look at the breakdance moves that I'm doing, they're not specifically just breakdance moves. Kind of like what I'm wearing in the shots is a very kind of working class, uniform. One of the things that happens being a Latino artist is that you kind of get pigeonholed, specifically here in LA. People assume that you are a Chicano artist, that you do paint murals, that your practice is only mural painting and printmaking. Growing up, my influences were, Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, Martin Luther King. My work is in a sense, it is identity-based, it is political, but it's not completely activist work. Projects are determined by the idea. That's why a lot of the work always ends up looking different. Like all the projects, some are object-based where they're more sculpture work, very formal. Some of them are sound-based, some of the work are drawings. Again, going back to the series that included The Breaks and White Minority, that whole series of work was titled All Mod Cons, which is shortened for All Modern Conveniences, which is again this kind of reference to modernism. And all that work was very object-based. It all referenced painting and traditional sculpture. 3 points in history. The Minutemen in terms of the Revolutionary War in America, and the Minutemen, the punk band from San Pedro, which is in the harbor area here in LA, and the Minutemen, the border guards. One piece in the work is this mural project, which is based on a lyric from one of their songs, which is called Corona. Another piece in the series was taking the Gadsden flag, which was the first flag flown in the U.S., which comes from Benjamin Franklin's political drawing of the colonies and how they were being broken up, and that kind of influenced this flag. And I was really interested in how this flag is used by, you know, both extremes of the political spectrum. It's used by really right-wing patriots. They fly the yellow Gadsden flag, and it's also used by really left anarchists. There's really no alternative space in LA. Kind of, you have to be in the club to play. Personally, I've shown here in LA a lot, but I've had more success outside of LA. I used to collaborate with Mario Ibarra. We were doing these performances where we would take old Atari computers. I found an Atari computer and I learned how to program it. So I was making beats with this old Atari computer, and we would take like kids' electronic toys like keyboards and Play School mics and rewire them and run them through effects. So some of the songs that we sampled, some of the images had to do with like ideas of crossing or smuggling or kind of this act. You know, it's pretty much like just noise. We would wear like matching kind of craftwork style like uniforms.
With your bitter twisted lie, you may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness affect you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just 'cause I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of times, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down my teardrop, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just as I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatred, but just like life, I'll rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh, does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave, and so